Today on Community Connections, we're going to be talking to state champions, Long Branch Wrestling. I have with me today Coach of the Year, State Coach of the Year, Danny George, and State Champion Nick Visicaro at 160 pounds. And I'd like to thank you both for coming over.
Thank you for having us, Mayor.
My pleasure. You guys had a pretty interesting year. You've gone 53-1 over the last 2 years. And Nick, you won one of the best matches any of us ever saw in winning the state finals. What are your best memories of this year, other than Nick? We'll get to that in a minute.
It's just been, you know, there's two schools of thought last year, going undefeated, winning a state title, kind of coming the underdog role, and everybody not really knowing what Long Branch Wrestling was all about, to this year trying to sustain something that you have created, that you have been a part of, is different, and it's hard. And I think the memories that I will never forget is the daily grind, you know, making sure everybody's on weight, making sure everybody's doing what they need to be doing in the classroom academically, because our standards have gone up for the kids. And that's the journey that you talk about. You know, the matches, you'll look back on the high point, which is probably the most exciting dual meet I've ever been a part of, in front of a college crowd, in front of two college teams. It was amazing, you know. The grind.
Right down to the last second of the last match.
Yep, and the grind, going through the state tournament again and doing something that no team in Monmouth County history has ever done. It's an awesome experience.
You never coached a state champion before?
No, I have not. I coached a young man from Red Bank that made it to the finals.
Ashton Lovick?
Yep, Sean Lovick, 215-pound. First time they had the weight class.
Right.
And we were actually winning 10-4 and lost the match.
Well, so you sort of did it a little bit differently. You had Nikki, not exactly, you came out of the bottom bracket. But you were considered one of the favorites all year. You were one of the guys people talked about. But you won your first district title.
A little late, but...
Well, that's what you said to me afterwards. You said a little long overdue, I think, were the exact words you said to me. But you went through the state tournament down in Atlantic City pretty well until you were down 5-1 in the last period of the last match. What were you thinking?
A lot of things are going through my mind. Just gotta keep my head about me and claw my way back into this.
But you didn't exactly claw your way back in. You kind of, you know, I was sitting with a guy who knows more about wrestling than I. I know enough to keep my mouth shut when I'm watching a match. But you hit a Merkel, and then you demonstrated the move. You put me in a headlock and showed me. But you never hit one of those in a real match before.
I mean, I've done it in practice a few times, but when I was in that position, I was like, I don't really have anything to lose.
But you put the kid on, Anthony Sawley from Delran. You put him on his back, and you had a takedown, and the Merkel, all of a sudden, you went from, what was it? It was 5-4.
Yep.
And then, well, 5-4 because you had the takedown, and then you got a 3-point move, and you're up 7-5. But afterwards, I mean, you had a pretty happy celebration.
It was a great feeling, I know. All you can really do is be happy.
When was the first time? I mean, when did you start wrestling? How old were you?
I think I started somewhere around like 2nd grade.
How old, and was your brother your first coach? Was Phil your first coach?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just wrestling in the back room of our house, rolling around, doing a lot of other things.
break a lot of furniture?
Pretty close.
And was, I guess Seth was probably around too, because he's at a lot of the matches. And
Yeah.
I think he takes something of an uncle-like interest in how you're doing. Another one of your former wrestlers.
Yep.
You
Both
know-
boys. Both Phil, Nick's brother, and Seth wrestled for me.
But, you know, you've got, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I've known you, I guess I met you when you were in 7th and 8th grade. I wouldn't say you're a big talker.
Nah.
But I watch you get interviewed, and you're poised and articulate. But one of the things that impressed, you said you were interviewed after you won on Flow Wrestling, and the guy asked you where you want to go to college, and you said if you had your choice, Oklahoma State, one of the top programs, one of the best coaches in the, you know, John Smith, one of the great coaches. Why would you want to go there?
I mean, I've always looked at their school, and I always liked it. And probably one of my favorites is that I really like their style. They're real offensive, and they like to attack. And, I mean, that's kind of how I am. So I'd like to get better at that.
But you also said something that really impressed me. You said, I got to work a lot harder if I want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, they're up high. They're one of the best schools, so I really got to prove that I'm one of the best to go there.
Another state championship would help, not to put any pressure on you. But I know you well enough to know that that's, you know, not long after your parents took you out to eat after you won in Atlantic City, you were starting to think about next year.
Yep.
Do you wrestle? You're one of the year-round wrestlers. No football for you.
No. Even if I wanted, I wouldn't be allowed to play football. I get cut first day. You can't play football.
But, you know, it's funny you say that, because, Dan, I've heard you talk. I mean, you've got some other wrestlers. Johnny Robertson comes to mind. Johnny had one of the kids I was proudest about, you know, particularly after Easton and Phillipsburg. That kid got focused. Third in the state. But you wanted him to play football.
Yes. It's a great combination, especially with the upper weights. You know, it's great for the heavyweights, great for even the middleweights. You know, you have kids that I think in 2009 we have lost focus in our high school athletics, in the sense that some kids get so streamlined and get out of secondary and third sports and just get focused. Oh, I'm gonna get a scholarship and I'm gonna do this in this one sport. They lose sight of what high school athletics is all about. You know, it's about developing young kids, you know, physically as well as mentally. And you know, Ohio State is where I went to school, and listening to the head football coach at Ohio State.
Passion to compete.
Passion to compete, and they look for kids that compete in more than one sport, because, you know, once you get through the athleticism of an athlete and a college participant, you look at the ability, what he does as a competition. You know, how well, if he's that good, he should be able to excel in more than one sport.
So, you know, in this year's team, your 215-pounder, Randy Rodriguez, not exactly out of nowhere, but a semi-regular in your lineup, wins the 215-pound district champion. Also, you're starting quarterback and a defensive lineman on the team, both sports. Amir Washington, 2 sports. There's no way Amir doesn't play 2 sports. Your nephew, Billy, 2 sports.
You look at it, each one has its own tale, you know.
Right.
You look at some kids and they're football players, and you're saying, geez, how am I going to get this kid better? One of the great ways to get them better is put them in an individual sport where they got to compete, where they got to walk out there, where they got to keep their composure, where they got to work hard, so they don't want to be embarrassed, and they can't get embarrassed, and if they do, how are they going to react, you know? So that's the football guy. The wrestling guy is, how am I going to get him a little tougher? How am I getting a little bang? Let his body go. Let it react. So, you know, it's a nice, when you see them work well with each other. Football helps wrestling. Wrestling helps football. No question about it.
How about, well, you're still coaching track.
Yes.
A couple of you kids could afford to get a little quicker.
Yep. And I have quite a few football players that run track. You know, I mean, in this day and age, with the personal trainers and the sports complexes that everybody's paying a lot of money in the local schools to go get a trainer and do all that stuff, we try to keep it in-house. We say, okay, listen, I can by 5:30 every night, you can go to study hall, you can go to the weight room, you can do the agilities, and you can run and get faster all by the time 5:30 rolls around.
And you haven't had to spend a dime.
Yep, haven't had to spend it. You know, we have, you know, thanks to Mr. Freen and the Board of Education, we have one of the finest high school campuses in the Northeast, let alone the state of New Jersey, and we want to take advantage of that. We want our kids to stay in-house and stay with us.
Want to keep an eye on some of them.
Yeah. You know, this way we keep them academically.
Right.
We know they're in good standing, and we get great workouts.
Nikki, you're a year-round wrestler.
Yep.
You won the States on a Sunday. When was the next time you were in a wrestling room?
Probably that Tuesday or that Thursday.
You were ready to go again. This is what you love, though. I mean, it's not like you don't have to force yourself. I mean, this is what you want to go do, or?
I mean, I'm looking at a lot of things, but when I go to college, I want to be in there. I want to be in the room, banging heads, wrestling hard.
Good. Where do you go for that? I mean, it had to be maybe the most intense wrestling room in the state this year. I mean, your middleweights and upperweights, they were the best in the state. I mean, one of the things for people who don't know, Sunday afternoon at the state finals, every Long Branch wrestler was on the mat, and the team was got the award for being the #1 team by the Coaches Association in the state of New Jersey. And then 2 days later, the Star Ledger came down and gave you the nod as the #1 team in the New Jersey. Never happened before in Monmouth County team.
Nope.
That must have been a good feeling for both of you.
It was, you know, it's the pinnacle
Yeah.
of athletics. You know, I know in the 70s, you know, the basketball team was in that
They were that
arena.
good.
You know, they were that good. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is things like that come around very, very few times in a lifetime. You know, the last time it happened in Long Branch was the basketball team, and now 30 some odd years later, you know, a wrestling team shows up that has reached that pinnacle.
Well, you said something. Last year, team went undefeated. I mean, those of us who go and root for the kids, we knew we were going to be a good team. None of us, and I mean, these are kids I've known for a long time. None of us knew they were going to be that good. And you were the underdog. This year, you were one of the favorites. But after the Phillipsburg match, I think the kids went back and were the underdogs again. To the extent that you can tell us, what did you say to them after Phillipsburg?
We talked about.
You got 2 minutes.
Yeah,
before we're going to
we
take a
weren't
break.
we weren't doing. You know, we had got a little complacent in the room. We were in the middle of our season. You know, we started to read our own clippings a little bit. You know, we got to a point where we weren't doing the same things that got us to that undefeated state champ. We weren't doing that anymore. We were more worried about cutting weight and more worried about this match and that match, and the week ahead was High Point. We were looking ahead to things. As a team, we needed to refocus. And as a football coach, I think one of the great things, losses make you stronger. They make you stronger because they make you look at everything you do on a daily basis. And we weren't doing things right. You know, we were cutting corners in the classroom, we were cutting corners in the wrestling room, and it woke us up. It fired us up. It woke us up, and we realized that we can't take anything for granted.
You think you beat High Point if you'd beaten Phillipsburg that night?
My gut tells me no, you know, because I think it would have been delayed a week.
What do you think, Nick? What do you think? I mean, had you ever seen a scene like we saw up in Easton that night? You ever seen anything like that?
No, never.
You want to ever want to go through that again?
No, I don't think so.
But the kids, I mean, we're going to take a break in a second, and we'll talk more about the High Point. I mean, we're saying High Point. It was a high point of the season in a lot of ways, and that's who we wrestled. I mean, they have a great team, and I got to say, I mean, particularly after Phillipsburg, it seemed like they had a great group of fans that were just like us, rooting for their kids.
Yep, no question.
And the wrestling that day up at Rutgers was just from the first match, and then you had the first match that night, and then Omar Akel, who transferred here from Monmouth Regional this year. The match he had was still, I think, the best, maybe the best match I ever saw. I want to talk about that when we start up the second half.
Okay, great.
Over the past 20 years, Clean Ocean Action has fought and won many battles to protect our ocean. We've all worked hard and are proud of our accomplishments, but the fight's not over. Pollution from people is a serious problem, and you can help.
Get involved.
Volunteer! Make a difference.
Volunteer.
Get involved. In Miles.
You can make a difference.
We want a clean ocean!
Join Clean Ocean Action. Join Clean Ocean Action.
You are the solution to ocean pollution.
I propose 3 cheers for those we leave behind.
Congratulations.
It's in paper now.
Good job. Congratulations. Proud of you. All right. Ensign Elliott. Who's going to salute him? Guys, who gets to salute him first?
Back with Danny George and Nick Visicaro. We took a break. We were talking about the High Point match. Second match of that night. Nick comes out. I think you tech fault your kid. Omar Akel, who we're counting on for victory. Because that's all he ever did. Until he got to States, he was undefeated. Wrestling a kid named Billy Smith, pretty good, a state qualifier.
Yep.
At 171 pounds. Down 9-2 starting the third period. And if you're watching on Flow Wrestling, the announcer, who's a pretty good announcer and a very seems like a very knowledgeable guy, saying, well, he's hoping he doesn't get majored.
Right.
Because we can't, and we're counting on a victory. And Omar does the impossible. What were you thinking? Were you thinking, let me ask you, 2 minutes left in the match, start of third period, 9-2. Omar have a chance?
I didn't even think that far in advance. I thought more along the lines of this can't get out of hand. We can't give up bonus points, similar to what the announcer was saying. As a coach, I think that was one of the great things about our team. The fact that Omar showed the character and the resolve to fight his way back. I mean, we always talk about it, and we do a lot of situations in the room. And one of the things you try to talk about, and Nick hit the nail on the head when he said, I'll just claw my way back into this. I will, it's not about, there's no 7-point move. There's not, So how am I going to get back in this? I'm going to get back in this scoring points.
Some levels you're not going to pin the kid either.
Right, exactly.
They're that good.
So initially it was, okay, we need to just score. We need to score some points, take the pressure off ourselves, put it back on him to defend you.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking, saying, okay, we got to regroup. We can't give up bonus points. We got to score some points. We got to find a way to score some points. He was very composed. He was very relaxed. So I felt comfortable that way.
No panic.
No panic. And no means did I think that the match was over if he lost. Because to me, that was a toss-up match. Because I knew how good that boy was. Billy Smith. And, we had other kids in the lineup that could come through, that may need it to come through.
But Omar, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a kid, he wins, he gets a couple takes down, back points, and then the takedown a takedown at the buzzer. That was a close call.
Yep.
The ref called it right because he called it our way.
Yes.
And then a takedown at the buzzer in overtime. And I mean, there's pictures of everybody in the stands were jumping up in the air. He's got you off the, we got pictures of you off the ground and the kids on the bench. What were you thinking while you were watching that, Nick?
Oh, man. I was thinking, well, maybe we have a chance at this. We could pull up those extra points, pull those close wins, come one of the #1 teams in the state.
It gets the team fired up when they see something like that. I'd never seen a kid so exhausted come up when he comes off the mat as Omar right then and there. You knew that he gave everything he could possibly give at that particular moment. But a lot of kids came out. You're saying you would have gotten the points. You hoped you would have gotten the points somewhere else. Jamie Keano, maybe the most improved wrestler on the team this year at 119. Jamie comes in with a
huge beats a state qualifier.
And when Jamie starts to believe he can do that every match, Jamie's going to be a state qualifier. Johnny Robertson, who we expected from. And then
one of the things I think that was important about that match, after the loss to Phillipsburg, we went back to basics. We got back in the room. I think the kids had some weight off their shoulders, about the undefeated thing. It wasn't like a conference thing. But we knew with our schedule that we would have another opportunity somewhere along the line to get back in the race, And we knew that we didn't talk about, okay, we have to win against High Point. We talked about what we did all last year. We talked about, okay, we're just going to get after it.
Well,
we're going to compete in every single weight class. We're going to scramble. We're going to fight for every point we can get in every match.
But you'd always said your goal as a team, it wasn't the goal when you set out your schedule and you talked about what you're going to do this year. The goal wasn't to go undefeated as a team. It was to go out and wrestle everybody.
Exactly.
And get the experiences you could.
I think as great as last year was, one of the disappointing things as a coach is that I walked out of Atlantic City and thought we didn't wrestle to our capability
in Atlantic City
a year ago. And
you didn't have that feeling this year.
Took a step back and said, what are we going to do? Okay, we won a state title. We have the team to possibly repeat as a group state champs. But how am I going to get that group of kids to another level? To a level where even with wrestling poorly, you're still going to place. So we went out there and we designed a schedule that would put our kids, because a lot of times you can't get those matchups, you can't get that excitement. You can't get, the Eastern open up with the 18th ranked or 16th ranked team in the country, your opening match, and Nick wrestling the #1 ranked 60-pounder in the state.
Who you beat twice this year.
Who we beat twice, but you can't do that any other time with the match not on the line, because they had no choice. They had to put their boy out at 160, And so we did that. We had Eastern, we had Phillipsburg, we had East Dunn, we wrestled them all, hoping that by the end of the year, I think our schedule really showed.
Well,
really showed.
You had the most district champs in the state. 9 kids won the districts, including, I mentioned them before, Randy Rodriguez, who wasn't always in your lineup. But he goes and he wins a district title. And then you, not perfect at regions, but pretty well. Would have been, you wrestled one of the best kids in the state. Broderick, you beat him once, you lost to him once. But then the whole team made the mark in Atlantic City. 6 kids placing.
Atlantic City's a 3-day tournament. And I think, one of the things, the regions is a middle. A lot of times the kids know and the coaches know that, we got to make it through the region tournament to the state tournament. You're almost peaking. You're trying to peak for the state tournament.
Right.
So you're practicing, you're wrestling pretty hard through the regions, hoping that the competition, is doing the same and you're gonna scrape by, And then once it becomes a 3-day grind, I think our kids just got better as the matches went on.
You had a couple of kids who, I'm thinking specifically Johnny and Scotty Festeo. Maybe they took the most heat after Phillipsburg.
Yep.
Maybe deservedly so.
Yep.
Both great kids. But from that day on, Scotty's wrestling, Johnny people thought would do well, but Scotty was not favored to place. And he went and he just wrestled phenomenally well.
He wasn't favored to get out of the regions.
Right.
Really.
He had to wrestle great kids to get out of the regions, and he did.
And that's,
what I'm focused on, the 2 of them grew up before our eyes this year and did a great job.
And that's what we're, as much as in 2009, and Nick will tell you, there's the internet, there's the blogging, there's the texting, and all this information that is totally out there.
You ever thought when you wrestled in Region 6 you'd see anything like that?
Never. And so now what you get is, I'm still coaching 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. That we make mistakes as adults, and as coaches, kids sometimes make the wrong decisions, do the wrong things, and I have the ability as a coach to correct the support from administration that backed exactly what we did, and discipline was handed out. Things happened, and our kids learn. Every coaching moments, teachable moments.
You also have a great coaching staff.
Phenomenal coaching staff.
When you win Coach of the Year, and the first thing you do is you give credit to, the middle school, the rec coaches, and your assistants, because it's a tremendous group.
One of the things that I people say, he, when you ever talk to Coach George, he says these 3 or 4 things. But what we did is unparalleled in Monmouth County history.
Right.
Only happened twice in the Shore Conference out of the 44 schools.
Jackson
And Brick Memorial. That's
Great
it.
programs.
What happens is it's a tremendous undertaking. It's an undertaking that started with a recreation program 10, 12 years ago that these guys were going to every place in the state of New Jersey back then. Then you get them into the middle school. You have Coach DeAngelis, and you have Coach Simon, and you have Coach Mamano, who all could arguably be head coaches in many
Absolutely.
schools in the Shore Conference.
do a great job.
And do a great job. Then you bring them into the high school, and you have a staff where you have a state champion, Eric Saunders. You have Nick Tranchina working out with the big guys. And you have Coach Kegel, who wrestled at College of New Jersey.
And a great scout.
And a great scout. I mean,
Great
we,
scout.
we did so much scouting. We drove around this state getting film on everybody and anybody. We brought our projector down. We brought our DVD down to the States. Nick was watching both matches, of kids that he had wrestled. He watched the Keffer match before he wrestled Ketchel. We had Sally tape, so we watching Sally. We were coaching in between every round. We were videotaping, and that makes a big difference when you can watch
You had
it.
a state champ coach on the sideline. As good a wrestler as he was in high school. Eric Saunders won a state
Yep.
title. What's he telling you before you go out on the mat to wrestle the finals? Anything special?
Special, just telling me to always wrestle how I wrestle. Don't tie up, just work my moves, do what I have to do, and I kind of went out the window a little bit at the beginning. But
Well, let me ask you, we got a couple minutes left. You had a strategy. I mean, you told me there's a strategy for Nick at the beginning that sort of went out the window. But you don't really get to coach much during the match. I mean, there's talking that goes on, but it's not like you take a timeout, and not like football.
I think the kid came out of the gates fast. I think Nick was a little bit nervous and a little tentative. And you see him, at one point in the match, you see him punch the mat. And I think that was almost like a stress releaser. He said, okay, darn it, it's over, it's done, now I'm going to go out. And what people don't realize about Nick Vizzicaros is he's a great scrambler. Once you get into a match and get into a flow, and if you really wrestle with Nick, you're going to find yourself in some bad positions when you wrestle. If you stay away from him and you try to run around, then Nick, comes after you, but he's not the same wrestler. What was fortunate was Nick got into situations where he could really wrestle like he was wrestling back in the room.
Mm-hmm. The room. What's the room mean? I mean, you wrestle in the room. You've got Omar Akell, who's a region champ at 171. I don't know if you wrestle Billy George third in the state. He's got you by a few pounds. Andrew Bellina, who we didn't get to talk about, but Andrew at High Point, you send him out against Guzzo, who's everybody's talking what a great wrestler he is, and Andrew does what he needs so the team wins. You got a lot of competition in the room on a daily basis.
yeah, I really do. I mean, and there's a lot of variety who I can wrestle against. I wrestle against Johnny Robb. He gives me that offense coming at me. I wrestle against Billy. I have to work against that defense. Just a lot of variety wrestling hard.
Made you a lot better.
It did.
Wow.
And then you throw in the coaches. He wrestles with Coach Saunders. All the coaches wrestle every day, which is
How tough is Coach
phenomenal.
Saunders? And we have to wrap up with that.
He's quick.
I'm sure he is. Well, thank you both very much for coming over.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. And, I'm already ready to start watching again next year.
Yes. We'll be there. We'll be ready.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.